Can you guys hear me and see me? If you can, do me a favor and raise your hand there. Okay, good. All right, so we've got kind of a lower amount. Hopefully some more people will join us. Basically, welcome back to our final remote session of the semester. We don't really have that much I want to accomplish today, other than assigning the final portfolio project, which is kind of the capstone of the course. So what we're going to do today is assign that project. We'll discuss it in some detail, and then, that'll be it. So I definitely don't think we're going to go the full time. I just thought we could go through that. At this point, obviously it's been a unique semester, unlike any other I'm sure that you've ever had in your educational career. We're at the end now, and basically what we kind of want to think about in capping out the entire course is we've had about 7 drafting exercises that you've done to date. I'm calling 5 of them substantive assignments, right? You've had a complaint draft. You've had to draft an answer to the complaint, a motion to dismiss, which was based on multiple rules, the federal rules of civil procedure. And then I had you draft a substantive email as well as a rewrite of a judicial opinion. You'll recall, and I've updated the syllabus, but if you go back and look at some of the syllabuses that I've posted in the past, obviously the same one, but I've updated it throughout the course of the semester. You'll recall that there was always going to be kind of 2 parts to the course: the initial drafting exercises that you completed throughout the semester, those 7 kind of initial exercises. That was always going to account for about 30% of your final grade. And the way I was just grading those was based on kind of a good faith effort for each of those assignments. I was receiving those assignments and then reading them and trying to kind of respond to the assignments with lectures that addressed some of the concerns or some of the issues that I saw in your writing. That was all 30% of your grade. The final portfolio project at this point is the bulk of the grade, which is 70%, and that is it consists of 2 parts. One part is you going back and editing 5 of those rough draft initial exercises and then resubmitting them in a draft format. And so since there were 7 of them, with only 5 being substantive, meaning you're kind of creating documents yourself, I decided to pick those 5. So the complaint, the answer, the motion to dismiss, the substantive email, and the judicial opinion are those 5. Then the second part of the final portfolio project is 2 new substantive exercises. So that includes both a memorandum that you're going to have to draft from scratch, as well as a second judicial opinion. So that together will consist of your final, add up to equate to your final drafting exercise. So if you go on, I've got Twin open on my computer. If you go on your own computer and log into Twin, if you go under the drafting exercises tab there on the left-hand side, I hope you have it open. I've updated the class syllabus just to reflect that today's class is really just about the final portfolio project. But if you go to the Twin site drafting exercises tab, the final folder is entitled Final Portfolio Project, and you'll see 4 PDF documents. They're all kind of relevant to the final portfolio project. But let's click on the first one there if you've got it open. Download that little PDF, and then let's talk. Let's see here. Okay, so I've got mine open. Hopefully you've got yours. Basically, it's this final portfolio project. The little, the first PDF here is just a kind of broad overview of the entire assignment. And it says, over the course of the semester, you've completed 7 drafting exercises, most of which required you to prepare rough drafts of various legal documents. Those rough draft exercises accounted for 30% of your final grade. At this point, you must now complete the final portfolio project, and the project has two parts. So part one is you going back, editing 5 of your rough drafts, taking into account what you've learned over the entire semester, and then resubmitting those in final draft form. So those are drafting exercises 4 through 7, the complaint, the answer, the motion to dismiss, the substantive email, and the judicial opinion. Part 2 then is you have to complete 2 new drafting exercises, things you haven't seen before, but you want to take into account some of the rules, principles, and skills we've discussed in class and submit the second part of your 2-part project. And that's a new memo and also a second judicial opinion. Ultimately, that together will account for 70% of your final grade. And so what do you have to, when do you have to turn it in to me? You have to turn it in by Sunday, May 3rd at 5 o'clock p.m. Why did I pick Sunday, May 3rd? Well, a couple reasons. One is I wanted to, operate in accordance with the syllabus as it's been stated throughout the semester, which is to give you approximately 2 weeks to finish the assignment. I've also kind of been informed by the dean's office that grades are due to the Associate Dean of Academic Affairs by, I believe it's Tuesday the 5th. And so, which seems like a quick turnaround. It's obviously really, for purposes of this semester, it's certainly not going to be very quick, just because, given the pass-fail nature of the grades. But with that in mind, since I've got to turn everything into the registrar and the associate dean by the 5th of May, I thought giving you roughly 2 weeks until the 3rd made some sense. So you've got just under 2 weeks to get the portfolio to me, and then I can go through all of your substantive assignments, your portfolio in total. And give you the credit for the course so that I can turn around and submit hopefully all passing grades and no issues on the 4th, and they'll be well in advance of the deadline the following day. Any questions about that? We're still going to go through the substantive assignment or the substantive portfolio project, but are there any questions kind of procedurally about how it's going to operate? No questions. Okay. So let's go back through this. So really, there's nothing I've posted extra about your complaint, answer, motion to dismiss, substantive email, or first judicial opinion. I'm just basically saying you go back, you kind of proofread those. Some of them may be in good shape. You may feel like you did a pretty good job. You may feel like you've already incorporated some of the discussion points and some of the tips that we've talked about in class, and you may feel good to go. You may not feel great to go, but you may feel like, for purposes of this semester, you are good to go. And I get that. I think it's obviously a unique semester. And if you feel pretty comfortable with what you have so far, I think that's fine too. I kind of recognize the reality of where we are. I think then most of your attention is obviously going to be spent on 2 of the final portfolio project, which is this new memo and this new judicial opinion. And I have posted information about those 2 new drafting exercises, and that is also located under the final portfolio project folder on TWEN. So again, on TWEN, under the drafting exercises folder, the final folder is final portfolio project. When you open that up, the second and third document talk about these 2 new drafting exercises that you have to do as part of the final portfolio project. So let's open the first new drafting exercise, which is for you to draft a memo to a supervisory attorney about a substantive legal issue. Now, it looks like a long fact pattern. This one is very much, I would say it's akin to the email assignment that you've done. It's certainly a different assignment, but it's very similar in the sense that both deal with immigration law, both deal with kind of substantive, concrete legal issues, and they ask you to analyze a fact pattern and kind of write an email / in this case, it's a memo to a supervisory lawyer asking you for your opinion about 1 or 2 legal questions. And so I'm not going to read over this entire fact pattern for you. You've got plenty of time to do that. But what you'll see is this fact pattern it's about an individual named Diane, who was admitted to the United States as a lawful permanent resident. She opens up this gelato shop here in Lexington. She, has a successful business, but unfortunately, she has an encounter with law enforcement because of a drug-related crime. And so she gets not only charged with that crime, but she then gets thrown into deportation proceedings by the Department of Homeland Security. And so I know, again, this kind of is like the email assignment you had to do. You don't know much about immigration law, but the point is you get to the end of this, and then a supervisory lawyer named Lincoln walks into your office and basically says, hey, I need your help. One, can the Department of Homeland Security remove Diane because she was convicted of a controlled substance offense? And two, assuming that they can, is she entitled to this form of relief based on kind of her factual circumstances? And so you say to Lincoln, like, hey, I don't know anything about it. And he's like, don't worry, I've done the research for you. And page 3 is this document on the current status of the law regarding controlled substance violations. And it gives you law on both the removability of an individual based on a controlled substance offense and also law on the second issue with respect to cancellation of removal. And so, again, this is supposed to be just one more assignment, one more drafting exercise where you can take what you've learned about this bottom line up front, kind of top down, informing and persuading means of writing that we've discussed over and over and over again in class. And it's just another way for you to show me that you've kind of internalized what we've discussed at length in class, and you're kind of recognizing how you might want to start to organize some of these substantive legal documents. And so, really, I just want you to read that fact pattern, and I want you to kind of sketch out how you would draft this memo, kind of outline it to yourself, and then draft me a substantive email that answers both of Lincoln's questions. And when you're looking for tips, the best assignment that you could kind of look back to is the email, because it's very similar in format to the email. The only difference is this has 2 issues, and I think the email only had 1. But the assignment is very similar, and it kind of is testing some of the same skills that we learned when we discussed drafting substantive emails. Any questions about that? Okay, no questions. So again, we're thinking about the final portfolio project. It's due on Sunday, May 3rd by 5 o'clock. We're thinking about the 2 parts. We know part 1 is for you to go back, take the complaint, answer, motion to dismiss, substantive email, and judicial opinion that you draft, put it in a final project form or final draft form. And then now we're on to the 2 new substantive assignments. The first one we've just discussed, which is that memo. And what's the second substantive assignment? Well, if you go and look back in that TWEN folder under the final portfolio project, the second drafting exercise is for you to do another judicial opinion. And why am I picking this one? I'm picking this one because I think it's another good way for you to take a piece of writing that you may see out in, the world, out in the legal world, hear another judicial opinion, and recognize kind of what is good about it and what maybe could be improved upon. So I want you to take this opinion. It's Miller versus Warren County Jail. It's another pro se case. I'm picking pro se cases. They're kind of close to my heart, kind of like immigration is, but I think they're also easy for you to digest, right? It's easy for you to kind of imagine, hey, you've got a prisoner who's incarcerated in a state or a federal facility, and they're complaining about the conditions of their confinement. And so that's pretty easy to wrap your head around factually. So I want you to take this case, read it, and then I want you to rewrite it kind of like you rewrote the opinion with respect to the Eighth Amendment, the deliberate indifference case. The difference here is this is not about Eighth Amendment cruel and unusual punishment or deliberate indifference to a prisoner's medical needs. Instead, the crux of this case is a prisoner who is complaining about their access to the courts. And again, you may not be familiar with an access to the court claim under the First Amendment. That's totally fine. The case law, or the case that's the opinion that's drafted by the judge out of the Eastern District of Tennessee, I think accurately summarizes the status of the law under the First Amendment in this area. basically what you've got to have is a prisoner who's complaining that prison officials are preventing him or her from accessing the courts. Maybe the prisoner wants to file something in their substantive criminal case. Maybe they want to file another lawsuit. And what they're claiming in this case is, hey, they're not giving me the forms I want. They're not giving me the legal research materials that I need. I don't have access to a law library. I don't have access to paper. They're blocking my mail. There are certain circumstances under the First Amendment under which prisoners may be able to bring a claim, an access to the court's claim against prison officials. But the Sixth Circuit, at least, has basically said, like, if you want to bring such a claim, you not only have to show that prison officials are blocking you from accessing the courts, but you also have to have something to say about what sort of, relief you're seeking from the courts. What are they preventing you from doing? Just preventing you from filing anything and everything with courts isn't a viable access to the court's claim. In other words, you have to show some sort of prejudice. And this is all discussed in this Miller versus Warren County Jail. So the first thing you're going to have to do is open that PDF up. That's another PDF, the final PDF that's located under the final portfolio project tab. You're going to have to open that up, read the case, of course. And it's pretty short. I mean, it's really barely over 3 pages. It's probably even a little bit less than that. But if you open it up, you'll just see that it's a pretty straightforward case where the court makes it clear, hey, this individual has not been able to demonstrate that he suffered any actual prejudice as a result of the defendant's alleged conduct. And so the court pretty quickly dismisses the plaintiff's complaint. And, I think it's probably the right answer. I'm not looking for you to kind of in any independent research at all. In fact, I think you can stick with whatever citations exist within this opinion. But I think what you'll see more importantly is it's somewhat top down, it's somewhat bottom line up front, but it's not written in the kind of tight, concise, clear way that we would kind of strive for, that we would say, really makes for good writing. And so, again, this is another, just a second new assignment, but it's another substantive assignment where I want you to kind of demonstrate that you've kind of been following along and taking to heart some of the tips for good legal writing that we've talked about, and not only can incorporate those in documents like an email or a memo, but also once again in another judicial opinion. And so, the best thing to do would be to get a marker, get a pen, and mark this thing up and rewrite it in a way that's more bottom line up front, that not only informs the reader about what is going on substantively, but also is more persuasively written in a clear, concise, proof-like manner, the way that we've kind of consistently talked about as far as how you should write a judicial opinion. So that's it. I mean, it's been such a wild semester, obviously, but that's kind of what we've always been going for. The final portfolio project certainly looks a little bit different than I anticipated when we started. I thought we might have a few more assignments throughout the course of the semester, and that I might have a little bit more flexibility with respect to, picking and choosing some of the things that we might put as far as the first part of the assignment, and then maybe doing some different things. But ultimately, the goal of the semester, the goal of the course was really to get you familiar with the different types of documents that you will be drafting as an attorney, really if you are involved in any sort of civil litigation. The class wasn't really focused heavily in any substantive way on transactional documents. I think that's partly because there's a lot of business litigation courses you could take at the law school. It definitely was not heavily focused on criminal litigation, because I kind of think about that with respect to criminal trial process, either the first part or the second part, whether you're with the constitutional amendments and searches and seizures, or the kind of bail to jail stuff that you learn about in a criminal trial process, maybe a Crim Pro 2 class. But the goal of the course was to get you exposed to a variety of documents that fall not only under the broad category of civil litigation, like complaints and answers and motions to dismiss, or even we talked about to some extent motions for summary judgment, although you didn't have to draft any of those assignments those types of motions, not only focused on documents related to civil litigation, but also just the kind of everyday stuff that you'll be drafting as a lawyer, like emails, like memos. And if you're clerking, judicial opinions, and even if you're not clerking, you're kind of aware of what goes into a judicial opinion so that if you're writing a motion for a judge, you kind of know how to tailor your motion to get more bang for your buck. So hopefully you feel like we've accomplished some of that. But at the end of the day, we're now kind of at the end of the line. And so there's no class next week. There's no more classes. We're at the point now where you've just got to turn in your final portfolio project. And so at this point, it's those 5 assignments you've already done, and then it's the 2 new assignments, all of which is posted on Twent. A student had a question about how I want it submitted. You could, it's going to be 7 assignments, right? The 5, review assignments or the 5 rough drafts turned into a final draft, plus the 2 new assignments. You could put that all in one document if you want and shoot me an email. I want you to submit it via email. I think that's just the easiest way for me to get it. You could take your email and you could attach 7 different documents. That's fine too. I don't really have a strong preference, to be honest with you, in large part just because, I'll be completely candid with you. The likelihood of me having read all 7 of your assignments for all, I think there's 16 or 17 of you, by the time I can turn around the assignment to the registrar is slim. So chances are what I'm going to have to do is spot check it to make sure that they're all complete, that they're all, that you've turned in all 7 of the assignments, and I'm going to give you a pass for it. And then what I'll do is go back and read them in more substantive detail so that if you want to reach out to me and have an individual conference, we can. I realize that's not ideal, but my main priority for all of you is that you get credit for the course, because you don't want this looming over your head, and the grades ought to be turned in and will be turned in a timely fashion. But I also want to give you the maximum amount of time to work on the assignment, because even though most of it is stuff that you've already done and worked on, there is some new stuff that will, I think, take you the full time. So all of that is to say, I'm really flexible on how you submit it. I just want you to submit it by email, whether that's one attachment with all 7 in one attachment or 7 different attachments. I don't really have a strong preference. You just want to make sure that all 7 of them are completed to the best of your ability so that I can go forward, find your name, find that you've completed all 7 assignments. Looks like it's a good faith effort, and then they're going to pass the course. It would be very different if we were doing, grading, because then, I just remember teaching the course last semester, and then there was a whole curve, and I went through all the assignments, and it was very substantive point-by-point grading. I'm just, kind of pulling back the curtain. It's not going to look, the grading's not going to look quite as detailed just because it doesn't have to. But I don't want you to feel like you're being shortchanged to the extent that you want substantive feedback. And so that kind of goes to a point that I had made last class that I want to kind of reemphasize, which is, normally I would say, and somebody could push back on this, if I thought a little bit about it more, maybe I would push back on it myself. But what I was going to say is, and I'll say it, if you have questions or you want to reach out to me and continue to talk even in this 2-week period about your writing and about kind of tips on drafting, I still think that's fine. And why do I hesitate? Normally I would hesitate because I would say, look, all the learning was done up until today's date. Now, between now and you turning in a final portfolio project, that's kind of, everybody's on an equal footing. You can't kind of get extra help or tips. That all seems kind of hokey now because it's a pass-fail course. You're all going to turn it in on time. You're all bright students. You're all thoughtful. And you're all going to pass the course. I'm very confident of that. And so I think with that in mind, I think if you want to talk between now and even the final project is due in a substantive way about writing, I welcome it. So that will function a little bit like an exception. It's kind of like when you work on a final paper, you wouldn't talk to your professor midway through your paper. You wouldn't talk to your professor midway through your final exam about the final exam. But under the circumstances, you're not getting a leg up on one of your colleagues. Not that you should look at it that way anyway with grading, but you know what I mean? When you're thinking about a curve, you might think, well, you should get substantive feedback from the professor mid-exam. That's all kind of out the windows. So that's a long way of answering a very short, pointed, thoughtful question, which is how do I want the assignment submitted? But flexibility on how they're submitted. The only kind of thing I'm not really going to be as flexible on is when you submit them. I would frankly rather you submit it. I don't want to say less than complete. I mean, you want to complete it. It's really important you get it submitted by the 3rd at 5 o'clock, because the last thing we want to do is start chasing you down right as I'm about to turn in the grades. You're better off just getting it completed to the best of your ability and making sure it's turned into me by by Sunday the 3rd, so that I can turn around on Monday, put all the grades together, all the passing grades, and submit them to the registrar and the associate dean. That way you don't have to worry about it. That's a long way of answering a short question. Any other substantive questions? I kind of hate that it's ending this way. I wish it was a little more interactive. I'm looking at a bunch of names and little shadow figures that don't. Can anybody turn their cameras on? I mean, I feel like maybe we should say bye. I hope you guys have had a great semester. I mean, I know it's obviously been unique, and we'll certainly all never forget it. I won't. As my kids are screaming downstairs, when we started the semester, and I was driving to Louisville every Monday. If you would have told me I would have ended up teaching you with a Doc McStuffins castle in the background, I wouldn't have believed it. But you know what? We are doing what we have to do, and my biggest priority in all of this is that everyone is staying safe, is staying healthy. I can only imagine what is going on in each of your own lives, and it's just such a difficult time with job losses and hardships that people are suffering and uncertainty, and it's an unsettling time, and I don't want this to be an unsettling experience for you. I want you to just, sit down, finish up your assignment, turn it in, pass the course, and know that if you ever need anything, if you ever want to talk, if you ever need advice, if you ever need a letter of recommendation, if you ever, want to pick somebody's brain about careers or whatever it is, I'm happy to serve that role and be someone you could reach out to. So I hope you don't become a stranger after the course is over. And I hope you stay in touch. You've got my phone number. You've got my email address. You'll certainly have to email me for the final portfolio project. But I hope you all stay in touch. And I wish you the best. I hope you stay safe and healthy. And the same goes for your families and your friends. And I wish you the best of luck. So that's the end. If you need anything, you know how to reach me. Otherwise, I will look forward to receiving your substantive submissions by Sunday, May 3rd at 5 o'clock. And if you don't submit it on time, I'm going to track you down because I'm going to make sure you're going to get your pass. Okay. All right. Take care, everybody. Feel free to stick around if you've got a question. Otherwise, we'll talk soon. Take care. Stay safe. Hey, Dimitri, how's it going?
Good. Sorry, I didn't even mean to click that multiple times, but I guess maybe. Hey, everybody.
Everybody's sticking around. Well, let me go first. Do you mind if I call it? You guys can all stick around. We can all chat for a few minutes. I want to go into. I want to say something to April though first, because her and I had talked about meeting. I have a blue folder, April, with all of your assignments that I went through. I was at the office today because I have an office at the courthouse that I can totally socially distance because there's nobody else in there. So I slip in a side door, I go to my office. I had a blue folder, and it's still sitting on my desk. So I felt so awful. Like right before our class, I went to pick up my blue folder and I only had my syllabus. So do you mind if we meet virtually sometime like in the next day or two? I just want to make sure because that blue folder has all of your assignments with it and it's all marked up. So
Awesome.
okay.
That's fine. Just let me know when works well for you and your
Okay.
family. Give me an email.
In the next day